Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for a Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butch-Tester. You know what I like to do on my show? Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about my guest. I'll be spending time today with Julia Brooks. She is talking about her business today, Paradigm Shift LLC. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea because we are about to get started. Hello, Julia. Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Hello, Dr. Angela. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, before we get started, we always give our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves. There may be some folks out there that are unfamiliar with you in this capacity. With that being said, tell us you.
Okay, well, I'm the CEO of Paradigm Shift Consulting Group. It is a group that works with families of individuals with special needs and learning challenges, and we walk them through a successful transition towards adulthood and to thrive as adults. I'm married with 2 children, 2 adult children. One of my children is on the autism spectrum, so that's what got me really started with the whole system and meeting his needs.
Now, the title of the name of your business, I always find it quite interesting, and I usually ask this of my authors when they're on, tell us about the title of your book, but I find that there is just as usually an interesting or curious reason as to why we name our businesses, what we name them as well. So why was Education Consulting Service the proper way to introduce your business to those who needed your service?
Yes, I find that when I'm working with parents, they do have a different concept of how to approach advocating for their children, and I usually say we need to do a paradigm shift. So having that phrase constantly as part of my conversation, I decided that we needed to say paradigm shift for our services with our parents, and that seems to flow very nicely.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, is there a particular age group when you're working with families? Is a family that has a small child as appropriate as someone who perhaps has a teenage child or even an adult child that they are working with that happens to be on the spectrum? Is there a cutoff point, or does that not matter with what you do?
That does not matter. I have experience from toddlers when my son was first diagnosed. So I can go from toddlers because that is its own entity in terms of how we approach treatment plans for them before getting into the school system at the kindergarten age. And then the long journey from kindergarten to high school, and even the federal services now allow them to stay until age 21, where we can still work on preparing them for adulthood and thriving with either employment or additional training. And then afterwards, just lifetime skills, preparing them for the long term to be as independent as possible. So it's the entire gamut, because that's the gamut I actually walk through with my son.
Absolutely, and having that that life experience definitely helps. And when I think that any mother that's listening, when we go to the various forums or we're going to the groups for mothers, when we're looking for something especially related to our children, we want someone who says, hey, I've already been there, and this is what we figured out really worked for us. So the fact that you're sharing that with your business totally and completely makes sense. Now, there are a lot of parents that are saying that their children are having a really tough go at it since we are trying to survive a pandemic. be it that you're on the spectrum or off the spectrum, people are having a tough time getting their children the education, the resources, the motivation that they need to stay on track. Have you found that there have been any particular difficulties for parents who do have children that are on the spectrum during the pandemic?
Absolutely, and because the spectrum is so varied, each case has its own challenges. Some children cannot tolerate the Zoom because it's difficult for them to understand that they see their classroom, they see their peers, they see their teachers, and they're not understanding why they're not in the classroom. So that's one challenge. There are others who just can't focus long enough in terms of what Zoom is requiring of them, so they don't have that personal one-on-one interaction. So there are a lot of challenges that we have to navigate through to say, what is it they can tolerate, what is it we can do to make that more feasible during this time.
Someone right now just said, oh, wow, I didn't think about the child not being able to tolerate the Zoom. Because unfortunately, on social media, we have a lot of people that are not directly touched by an issue that still comment on a post. And I'm sure the light just went on for someone. That was a aha moment for them going, oh, I didn't think about that. Thank you so much for mentioning that. Now, as far as how you have been able to still assist parents, I'm sure with many businesses, it was in person, face-to-face, you would come in and have a consult. The same with myself. But now we're doing that in a very remote way. Are you finding that you're still able to meet with those parents, or has it been a little more difficult or strained because you do have to socially distance due to the pandemic?
Actually not. Surprisingly, Zoom works for the parents. We're not in transition in terms of transportation. We can just connect rather quickly. I get copies of the document, and so we are sharing either our screen or we both have the documents at hand, and we could go through line by line, page by page, and make our comments, and I can get feedback. So it has been working for us, and that's a good thing.
It totally and completely has been a saving grace, I find, for most professionals. If they weren't doing it before, we're really doing it now, and I think that for a lot of folks, they're going to continue to have that as an option for people who perhaps couldn't travel or their schedules were just so tight, but thanks to a Zoom call, you're able to still stay relatively close to where you need to be and still have that consult with you. Speaking of consult, what are those first steps in meeting with you? What does a parent need to be ready to talk about, or do they need to give you anything in advance prior to the consultation to make sure that the consult goes smoothly?
Okay, so first of all, I do a 90-minute no-cost consultation just to meet with the parent, if possible, meet with the child or adult, depending on the age, get a sense of the profile, what are their strengths and hobbies and interests, and then what are the areas that are challenging. That takes some time to talk through because sometimes the parent is not thinking in such detail that it takes a while to do that. And after the 90 minutes, I get to look at the data and say, this is where I think we can go, and if we're on one accord, then I begin to let the parent know this is how we need to prepare their documents. At least I would ask for the most recent, going back to 2 years, and all of their medical history, any documents from any specialist or therapist, or their school individual education plans, and any strategies that have come up. So that's the first thing. They have to gather all of that information. I do ask that they put it in a binder and have hard copies, because hard copies is their saving grace. If something happens on the computer, it crashes, it freezes, you can't access it, you have that hard copy, and I actually carry mine around.
And I think that absolutely is a great idea. I know that when I was dealing with breast cancer, and not that they are comparable in any way, but I kept all of the forms, and I too would put them in a binder so that I could go back if anything were to ever happen to me. Anyone around could say, "Well, she has this binder. Is there anything in there that can help you with
That's right.
what you need?" So you are so right. Phones need charging. Power does go out. Computers go down. That is a great piece of advice. Now, are there any common mistakes that you find that parents make while they're in meetings with, and I want to ask this question for various people. So, do they make any common mistakes when meeting with you?
I find that when we're in meetings, parents do not take notes, and they tend to focus on the I message. I would like this for my child. I don't think this is working. I encourage them to be child focused and use their child's name. Bronco's needs, apparently what we're doing is not advancing him. Bronco may better benefit if we try this. So it's all about Bronco. It's not about what I feel my son should have or my daughter should have. And taking notes is important because there's so much information and so many people in terms of the team are talking that you need to remember who is saying what and what position that they're coming from. Is this the therapist? Is this the general teacher? So we can go back and say, okay, maybe I need to have a follow-up question with the speech pathologist because I'm not sure in terms of what we ultimately concluded for the next step is really what I understood it to be. So note-taking is imperative. Now, a lot of my parents will bring their computers and they'll take notes in their computers. That's fine because they can always print out a hard copy for the binder.
Yes, I like that, and I'm so glad that you mentioned it because I'm sure someone was going, but I take notes on my phone or I want to bring my iPad, and you're saying that that's fine as long as you're taking the notes, and that's the important part there. I love it. I love it. Now we have about a minute or so left in this segment, but I want to ask you still along that same vein of any common mistakes. Are there any common mistakes that parents make when they're talking to their child's teacher about the plan when it comes to school?
I think one of the mistakes is they don't get clarity of what the plan is. And it's okay to say, can you break it down? Can you tell me what that looks like? Can you give me an example? Can you send me a template home so we can both be on the same page? They tend to not go to that extent of the detail to have the teacher really break down exactly what they're thinking.
Yes, I could see how, as you were going through that list, it's like, I could see how that could happen. And I find that some people are great at asking questions and really getting that very basic understanding of what needs, and then other people feel as though they don't want to rock the boat or be annoying or too compromising of the teacher in any way, that they just accept and move on. And it sounds like you're saying be open, ask the questions, get the clarification if you need it, and make sure you know what's going on. I love it. I love it. Well, Julia, it is time for us to go to break. But before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the name of your company and how can people get in contact with you?
Okay, yes. My service is Paradigm Shift, LLC, and you can contact our website at www.paradigmshiftllc.com.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know how you can get in contact with her. We'll be back right after this.
Hi everyone, Dr. Angela here. Did you know that Daily Spark is now on Facebook? That's right. You can visit with me at facebook.com/Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I want to know more about what you're thinking. I'd love to know which interview did you find the most entertaining or the most informative. I want to talk to you, and I want you to be able to talk to me. Simply visit facebook.com/Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Butchchester. My guest today is Julia Brooks, and we're talking to her about her business, Paradigm Shift LLC. Now, Julia, my next question for you is along the lines, still staying with that vein, because I find, again, that many times people just aren't asking the questions that they need to ask. And I want to kind of pick your brain, especially the fact that you're a mom who has gone through this as well. Along the vein of common mistakes, are there any common mistakes that you find that parents are making when they're speaking with their child's doctor, when it's that the time for the medical team of asking questions there?
Well, we always want to look at what is the last report and see what the documents have said that was the most recent. And the reason why is, depending on the time and the date of the last report to where they are now, whatever that may be 3 months, that may be 6 months, that we want to look at growth areas or areas that are stagnant or areas that were delayed. So did we lose some progress in a particular area? Are we still stagnant in a particular area? And then if we've made growth, how much of percentage was that? And that's important because they are usually strategies, especially design strategies, that is addressing certain areas. And we want to see how effective they are. And if they are not, we need to go back to the strategies and say, what do we need to change? What needs to be altered? Do we need to add more support services? Do we need to talk to an additional consultant in this particular area of speech pathology? Really break it down, because your last report is really going to tell you where that growth spurt happens to date, or where it's not happening, or where there's been a setback. So we need to always look at the most recent medical report to see if there's been behavior changes. We need to look at the most recent school treatment plan to see where those areas are that the child has achieved or not. So that's why it's important to have that binder, or if you're going to be digital and have it in your digital file, because that last report is really your documentation of the most recent progress. And we need to find out, are we moving forward? Are we moving forward with that child?
Now, you mentioned that school paperwork, that you need that IEP and you need that documentation to really help you. What if a parent has already scheduled a consult with you, but unfortunately they don't have that piece of paper, they don't have that form, that documentation? Would they still be able to have that consult with you, or do they need to reschedule with you and get that form from the school so that the consultation can be more productive?
We can have the initial consultation to develop the profile to really make sure that I'm clear, that the parent is clear on understanding where their child is in the various developmental areas where the challenges are. But the documentation is a part of what they are always supposed to have. And if they misplace the copy or just can't get it, they really can, just as a matter of an email or a phone call, to say, can I have another copy, please? You can email me that as an attachment to get it right away, and they can get it. So that will be no problem. At that point, we would need to reschedule, because I would need to be able to review it, and I like to do that first before I meet with the parent, so I can make my own comments, and then I can go page by page with the parent, and we can talk about what I'm seeing, what the parent is seeing, and at that point, questions or developed areas that circled for clarification as we're going by. So it's very tedious, and it takes quite a while to go through because IEPs are like, 30, 40 pages. So it's not a couple of pages that you can just go
I
through
see.
because you're
Okay.
looking at every area, and then you're looking at the specially designed instructions for each of those areas, and then you're looking at the last progress on each of those areas. So I do need to have that copy, and I need to go through it first before I meet with the parent so I can be familiar with all of it, and then the parent and I can reschedule and look at each page and each area and talk about, take our time to talk about that. And then make sure the parent is clear on
Mhm.
what that document is saying, and we make our marks. And she says, I don't really understand that. I says, good, let's circle that. Let's ask that question for that
Right.
particular one. Let's get the page number. Let's get the section so we can go right through it. So, yeah, we need to do that, and that does take some time.
I'm really glad I asked that question. Now, I am not familiar with how your consults go. And just in case someone's going, well, don't all therapists and counselors do it all the same? No, there are some similarities in things that we do, but not every practice is exactly the same. And that 30-page report that you're talking about, oh my goodness. Let me tell you, please, parents, if you are asked to bring this report or to send it, please, I now hear why it is so important to get it there in advance. Julia, you're right. You should not just skim over a 30-page report. That's how you miss something. And then you're not giving 110%. And I hear the care and the diligence that you want to give to your parents, and that's why you're asking for it in advance. I applaud you for giving someone that much time and attention in a free consult. Many therapists charge, they have a fee for that. So that is a blessing to every parent that has had that consultation with you. Thank you for giving of your time in that way. Now, if there is any one thing that you really want to make sure that a parent takes away from having had that consult with you, what is the main thing? And if you have, maybe one or two things, that's fine. But what is really the main thing that you want them to take away from having spent that 90 minutes with you?
I want them to take away empowerment. They need to understand that nothing happens in any of those documents without their signature. So if they're not clear with what is being said or what was written, they do not have to sign off on it. And they need to be comfortable with saying, I really need to have an addendum. I need to have something else in writing to go along with this so I can ensure that my son or daughter really is going to get what I think we're talking about. I need to see it. And also everything needs to be typed. No one can give them handwritten notes because it needs to be clear when it's typed exactly what they're reading and they're not misinterpreting words. So they need to know that they go away with empowerment, that the bottom line, the buck stops with them and nothing's going to move without their signature, and they do not have to be forced and feel that they have to sign right away.
Oh, I like that too, that there's that no pressure portion of it. And I think for so many people, they're not used to making same day decisions, not a knock on them, but they like that idea of let me sleep on it, let me roll it around, or let me, talk to someone else that I trust about making big decisions and see what they say as well. I like that aspect of what you're doing there. Now, for a parent who is having a really tough go at what's going on, so they've had the consult with you, they've been working with you for quite some time, but they're really having a tough time with finding out this news about their toddler. What advice can you give to them? This is fresh. They are feeling a little overwhelmed. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, it is difficult. It's a hard truth to embrace, and because dreams die, we have our expectations and what we hope our children grow up to be. And we realize that this challenge, this barrier, may or may not be an avenue where they can do what we were hoping they can enjoy. But I share, actually my overwhelming and some of the journey. Sometimes they need to know that they're not alone and this is not new. And for them to hear my journey and how I was overwhelmed, and that kind of gives them some consolation that, okay, then we can walk through this together. And it's okay to be overwhelmed. It's a moment, it's a space and time, and it's real, and it needs to be embraced. It needs to be talked through. What's overwhelming us, because I also I recommend giving the parent an opportunity to talk through all of those feelings, that we sometimes need to chunk it down. And when I say chunking, we need to have the full picture, but then really break it down to smaller pieces that's durable for them. And I still do that for myself. When I'm looking at the whole overall of the maze for my son, even now, I need to take smaller pieces and just focus on that one element and give that my energy and let the others go so I'm not distracted by them. And then I can find that my energy is better spent when very small parcel of the most immediate, and that's something that's easier to handle. And I walk that through with the parent as well.
Oh, I love that. I love that. When you said that you're able to share some of your personal story, and I think that for so many people, that's going to be the thing that they need to know, that you're not just giving information, but that you have been through this experience as well. That every story is, I'm sure, as unique as people are, but that you're familiar with it, that this just isn't something that you do, but that you have been on the other side of the seat as well, and that you have that extra layer of empathy there. I love it. Well, Julia Brooks, thank you so much for coming on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela and telling us about your service and making it known to the many parents out there that need your service. Now, before I let you go, one last time though, can you remind us what is the name of your company? How do we stay in contact with you for someone who says, yes, she's the one I want to talk to?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Angela. The name is Paradigm Shift, LLC, and our website is www.paradigmshiftllc.com.
Thank you again, Julia, for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. And listeners, thank you for visiting with us today as well. I hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you again today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.